Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast series proudly brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. I'm Harpreet Kaur, editor at ISAS, and I'll be your host on this episode. We have with us today Dr. Masudur Rahman, visiting research fellow at ISAS. Dr. Masudur is an economist by training with 2 decades of work experience internationally. Welcome, Dr. Masud.
Thank you, Harpreet, for having me today.
Dr. Masud, it has been a tough year for South Asia, from changes in governments and terrorist traumas to climatic vicissitudes and pandemic challenges. The region is likely to continue facing several severe challenges moving forward. In recent times, Bangladesh has been one of the more positive stories coming out of South Asia in terms of political stability and economic growth. However, it too seems to have fallen prey to the South Asian curse, if I may say. The people have taken to the streets, calling for the dissolution of the parliament to make way for new election and demanding the resignation of Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Which let's get some basics out of the way, which brings me to my first question, Dr. Masood.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
The anti-government protests are said to have been triggered by power cuts and increase in fuel prices. Are these the key causes of the protests, or do you reckon there are other underlying issues?
Yeah, thank you. The living cost and inflation is really galvanizing this political, unrest and anti-government protest. That's true because inflation is too high, is all-time high, and low-income people are in tremendous pressure now, and they're forced to reduce their food intake, because food inflation is skyrocketed at this moment. So yeah, that is another issues. In addition, the political situation between these two party, this inflation and living cost has also galvanizing this protest. In addition, I would like to say another issues, that is, banking sector scam that come out recently, and a huge amount of money taken by a one group of company who are very close with the government. That also stir off this anger among mass people, and that also increase this political unrest, and that could be violence, but this is happening now. So in addition, this inflation, these kinds of domestic, issues, especially the banking sector scam, that lead some kinds of anger among mass people in Bangladesh.
Sure. The massive protests in Bangladesh are a cause of concern then. The government has responded by arresting several opposition leaders. What do you make of the situation, the current situation, and where do you see things heading?
Yes, you see the main opposition party chairman is some sort of house arrest quite long time, and now they arrested the general secretary and vice chairman. He has been living London quite many years. So the political situation, I think, will be like this, unrest and volatile until next year election. And that's mean maybe next year December or January 2024. Because there's a huge, enormous mistrust between these two political party, and who is often lead violence. The opposition, the main opposition, the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, they demand a neutral and caretaker government with a new election commission to conduct this, general election. But the ruling party, Awami League, they won't, give up their power to any unelected, party or elected person for this election. So both party, they are standing, in their own position, and there's no sign of any dialogue or peaceful, solution. So it will continue this kinds of, instability until next year election. Uh, so we have to follow and see, and no sign of any kinds of dialogue or solution at this moment.
If we just look at the region, after Sri Lanka and Pakistan, Bangladesh is the third country in South Asia to seek help from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, in 2022. Can you please share more on Bangladesh's economic situation and perhaps the link with the IMF loan?
Yes, so Bangladesh economic situation, one you have mentioned, I also discussed a little bit inflation. So inflation is all time high, and that is the main reason for in this kinds of anger, protest, all these things, because of the income level of poor people is really deteriorate sharply. That is one issue, and of course, inflation has some other issues, some kinds of twin shocks that we know from the war between Russia and Ukraine and COVID. But Bangladesh government successfully managed this COVID situation and war. The impact of this. But recently, these kinds of other domestic issues arise. That is one issue. And second is foreign exchange reserve. Because of this, import has been increasing, and export the it's not increase at that compared to import increase. That is one other issue. That's why the balance of trade and current account balance deteriorated, every month. Remittance, that is the lifeline of Bangladesh, that has been also unstable over the few months. That is another reason of falling current account balance. And I mentioned that recently we have seen there's some irregular financing and taking money from the banking sector, and it's a huge amount. It's like 30,000 Bangladeshi taka, 30,000 crore Bangladeshi taka. If you convert in like USD, it's around $3 billion, and that is some kinds of uh, missed in anger, create some kinds of anger, and in Bangladesh. So this kinds of situation is like inflation, foreign exchange reserve, remittance, decreasing over the times, and then domestic some other issues like banking sector scam. This is some sort of economic mismanagement at this moment, and that's why the government is trying to increase some kinds of balance of payment position, because I may provide loan for to manage the balance of payment. So that's mean to manage the import bill actually. So this is a good sign of government, and some other countries in South Asia like Pakistan and Sri Lanka, that they are also seeking money from the IMF, because we get lower interest rate from IMF, from World Bank, so to increase the balance of payment position.
How do you see these developments, that is, the protests and the IMF loan, impacting Bangladesh, especially since it is expected to graduate from its status as a least developed country in 2026?
I think IMF loan is different issues, and protest is also different issues, because IMF provide loan for the managed balance of payment, and the World Bank provide loan for development project. And as Bangladesh foreign reserve fall rapidly from $48 billion to like around $26 billion within last 8 to 10 months, that's why the government need more money, more foreign exchange reserve to pay import bill. And that's why the government went to IMF and seek their some fund, and IMF will provide $4.5 billion. So that will be positive for the economy, and the balance of payment position will be better. But the other issues, that why foreign reserve falling, that is another issues because of currency depreciation. And currency depreciation has some kinds of issues, like not only because of export reducing or import increasing, but also there are some other external issues, like the Federal Reserve impose their increase their policy interest rate from 0.02 to 0.5% to 4% now. That's mean the USA dollar is strong. When US dollar is strong means local currency like Bangladeshi taka will be weak. That's mean taka is depreciated over the last few months, sharply. That translate the higher input cost and inflation. This also has another impact of payment of external debt. So the external debt will be increased. That's mean IMF loan will be higher, from $4.5 billion to higher amount of payment Bangladesh has to pay. So that is the other issues. So this is a very critical time because of management of foreign exchange reserve and foreign exchange management, not only dollar but also other currency. That's why government trying to find loan not only from the private, the multilateral agency, but also bilateral, country like Japan, China, Russia, India, and managing this foreign exchange, successfully, or trying to manage successfully, to bring different types of fund and loan from different sources. But after 2026, when Bangladesh will graduate, that time Bangladesh will no longer access these kinds of lower interest rate loan. So that will be another major issue. That's why after 2026, the foreign direct investment will be critical for Bangladesh development, because no more these kinds of lower interest rate loan will available. And then we need some kinds of fund, and FDI would be important for Bangladesh.
To round off this episode, Dr. Masood, if I may bring your attention to a report in 2015 where the World Bank lauded Prime Minister Hasina's leadership and gave high marks to the growth in Bangladesh. She was also credited through several mega projects of aiming to bring major changes, particularly in the lives of the lower to middle class Bangladeshis. However, now Prime Minister Hasina is at the cusp of an upheaval, if I may say, in the country. How would you assess, firstly, there are a couple of questions here. How would you assess her prime ministership? And what does the future hold for the Hasina government? And finally, will it be a good 2023 for Bangladesh and Bangladeshis?
Yes, number one, I call this, Hasina economics. Hasina economics means, you see, there are many, many mega projects that has been, have been implementing by this government. One is, the Padda Bridge. There's recently the open up. Second is Dhaka MRT. That is, they are actually launching this next week. Another big project is Rupur Power Plant, Deep Sea Port, Cornfully Tunnel, many special economic zone. So all these things, all this mega project that transform Bangladesh, from one development stage to other development stage. That is really great for the country and for development. And this also has an impact of reducing poverty, because this has a multiplier impact in the economy. So this I call Hasina economics. So that has been tremendous, successfully over the years, because this government was in power, is in power last, like 10, more than 10 years, 12 years. So this has some sorts of, huge positive impact on economic development. But at the same time, if you see the inflation, recent inflation and living cost, that has really impact the life of poor people, middle class, middle class people. That has huge negative impact in the country. And then there are some kinds of lack of governance, banking sector scam, so the corruption, so these kinds of also environmental pollution. So there are some other aspects of the economy, income inequality. So this has been, has some kinds of negative impact and worsen situation at this moment. So that's why people are some kinds of, stress, and they want to some kinds of rid of this kind of situation. We are, and because the next year is general election, the government is also very keen to, in power and continue their development project. But the opposition, they want a fair and inclusive election. So this is kinds of unstable situation at this moment in the economy and in the country because of this election and political unrest. But overall, I think Sheikh Hasina government, has done a very good job so far, except this, living cost and some other governance issues, some kinds of issue that in their party and also in their the administration system, they did not reform, and the kinds of corruption there, that people know, and people some kinds of situation that they want some kinds of change at this moment.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your assessment on the situation in Bangladesh, Dr. Masood. We can only hope for betterment, not only in Bangladesh, but the entire South Asian region. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to South Asia Chat. To learn more about our work, please visit us at isas.nus.edu.sg. You can also get updates from our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.